Well, welcome back to another episode of How to Become an Obstacle Buster. I'm your host, Warren Wandling, the show that's dedicated to helping leaders and entrepreneurs to overcome their obstacles, build resilience, and achieve success. And today I have a great guest for you today, Chuck Cooper. Welcome to the show, Chuck.
Good afternoon, Warren. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to our conversation today. So our listeners know a little more about your background. As the managing partner of Whitewater Consulting, tell us a little about your business.
So my business, I started a few years ago. The company is a business consulting practice that specializes in human resources for small and mid-sized companies. And really our mission as an organization is to really serve the small and mid-sized business community to help them be able to educate them and also evaluate their current scenarios and then offer some solutions that will provide some peace of mind and clarity through our HR solutions. I started the company in 2019. However, I really saw the inception of this company starting back in 2014. And as I was thinking about the name for the organization and the overall mission, I was in the evening, was recalling a trip that I went to Canada where we spent about 3 weeks. And the story that came to mind was as we were on this 21-day canoe trip, we were going through the rivers and the lake chains in Manitoba, and there was 2 canoes. We were reading our maps, and as we were going through what we thought was going to be 2 sets of rapids, we went through the first set successfully without any issues. But then as we approached the second set, it was really interesting because as we approached, we realized it was a waterfall and not a second set of rapids. And so we were scrambling, trying to get out of the current. And as we were struggling in a major way, and what was really interesting was the gentleman in the canoe behind us began at that point just to give some very clear, concise, confident, really give us directions on what we each needed to be doing. And by listening and following his guidance, we were able to get to safety in a matter of a couple of minutes. And so as I thought about my company and the start of Whitewater Consulting, I wanted to ultimately be the man in the second canoe to be able to give that guidance to my clients, the small and mid-sized business owners, to really help them navigate the world of being an employer.
Wow, that is quite a story, Chuck. And I love that illustration, certainly towards the edge of danger, if you will. To be able to maneuver, right? To stay calm and collective and follow a process so you can, the end of the story is a positive one.
Absolutely. And it wasn't a major, it would not have been a catastrophe, but it was probably about a 15-foot waterfall that we were approaching. So it was still, to your point though, the analogy is there that we really, our heart and our mission is ultimately to be able to serve our small and mid-sized business clients and really just help them, be as successful as they possibly can. Yeah,
and I think that's an essence of consulting, if you will, with clients on that perspective, because the consultant identifies challenges and problems for the client and then provides solutions, where others, if they're just working as an employee, they might see it, but based on the culture that environment produces, they might not tell anybody there's danger up ahead.
Exactly.
So what do you think is the greatest obstacle your clients encounter?
It's really interesting. That question, when I think about that, Warren, it really leads me to, look back over the last couple of years. And obviously, we've gone through periods where there has been great challenges trying to find qualified applicants. So like in 2019, it was really, really difficult for a lot of our clients to find good candidates to fill their positions. You go to 2020, obviously the market gets flooded because of the pandemic with a lot of great quality applicants out there. And now today we're back in the same situation where we're having ultimately the beginning of a war for talent. And I think that is really their greatest challenge that they have is going to be able to, as they look, we look back as well as when we look forward, just being able to have the right people on the team in the right seats, everybody going the right direction toward that common vision for success.
Yeah, I think that is so important in reference to today's environment is the talent war. And I've, based on some research and other discussions with other thought leaders like yourself, that because we're working remote, the barriers of necessarily being in the city, maybe where the corporate office sits, that they can have the talent can have a selection of where they want to work instead of being limited based on where they live.
Right. And I think that that's going to be something that we're going to see a lot of companies, and we are seeing a lot of companies right now from the West Coast coming across through the Midwest. We're seeing a lot more of the remote opportunities being made available to the employees. I saw a map the other day that really showed the U.S. and showed that from the West Coast to about Ohio and then back to St. Louis, from there west, there's going to be a great deal of opportunity. From those points to the east, there was still going to be a lot of people coming back into the office, and not as many remote opportunities were going to be available. But I really see, as we move to the future, and in the very, very near term, I see there becoming a lot more remote opportunities, and that geography is going to continue to expand.
So what strategies do you think contributed to your success as you're building your business?
I gave a lot of thought to that, Warren, before we started, and I really took some of the lessons that I learned from a previous company that I had, where I tried to have a product or a service that was going to fit everybody that I spoke with. And so as I started Whitewater Consulting, I really was focused on really trying to understand who our client was going to be. So we spent a lot of time looking at what are the particular qualifications for our client based on the employee headcount size, based on revenue, based on really the mindset of their leadership team. So we had some very, very well thought out, clearly defined qualifications that were going to be the clients we wanted to work with. Now, we speak with a lot of different companies that aren't necessarily the ideal fit for us, but the clients that we choose to work with as we move forward, those are the ones they fit those qualifications. Those that do not, we are referring those out to other solution providers that can be a great resource for them.
Yeah, I really like that framework that you've set up to be able to give that guidance.
What it's done is allowed us to make sure that we are serving the small and mid-sized business community in a way that is looking out for their best interest. And by providing and referring them and introducing them to other providers, it generates a relationship with those providers as well. So it's not a surprise each month when our phone rings or we get an email, somebody that's introducing us to one of their prospects they've been talking to. And then the clients, they also recognize that as their business grows, they all of a sudden they can check that box that they may not have been able to have checked earlier to become a client. So it creates a lot of win-win situations, and I've been really using that model for the last 20 years, and it's paid huge dividends for our work.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm visiting with clients, they will push back if we try to have that niche discussion, or niching until it hurts sometimes. But it sounds like you've done a great job in navigating that, and then knowing what the parameters are, and then referral partners where you can then lead that potential client to someone else that would be a better fit.
Yeah, that's our ultimate goal. We want to make sure that we're giving guidance to our clients that's going to put them in the best position. And if that means we can be that resource, great. If not, it's okay.
So some of our listeners might not be familiar with the benefits of HR outsourcing. You've mentioned obviously the talent war, and that's part of the outsourcing component. But can you just share some of your insights around HR outsourcing?
So HR outsourcing is a model for delivering HR service and HR compliance to small to mid-sized businesses. It's been in existence now for probably about 30 years. And there's some companies that we can probably all think about in that space, whether it's Insperity, TriNet, ADP, Paychex. Those companies are very, very well known. What's interesting is there's probably over 450 companies like that in the U.S. today. But the picture that I paint to business owners when it comes to HR outsourcing is, as an entrepreneur, when you start your business, you have a product or service that you're passionate about, you think provides value to the marketplace. And so you're really the chief salesperson, the marketing person, the administration, you do everything. But as your business grows and you start hiring employees, ultimately, at that point, you ultimately are setting up a second company. And what I mean by that is you have one company that's focused on the product or the service, taking that to market. But then when you hire employees, you really have started that business being an employer. And that encompasses everything from payroll to benefits to workers' comp to state and federal taxes to state laws for employment. So there's a lot of different areas that you get involved in that as an entrepreneur, we're not really passionate about, and honestly, we're not really knowledgeable about either. So the HR outsourcing allows small businesses to be able to plug into this system and this company that will ultimately handle all of those issues for the small business owner. And it really provides a great deal of resources to them where they can provide a higher quality benefit package that will help them to attract and to retain their key employees, as well as to make sure that they're in compliance from a liability. So it mitigates that liability of being an employer. The great thing is that by doing that, is it allows me as a business owner to really be able to focus on the growth of my company, the management of my expenses, and then also you really be able to maximize the profitability of the organization, all the while taking care of my greatest asset, which are my people.
Yes. So I really love your analogy of setting up a second company, right? Because I love that illustration because there's that break. Because I know there's listeners that are in this position. They don't want to give up control. And so they think that they have to do that work. And so by starting that second company, it gives them that vision of what they're actually doing is actually freeing up their space to focus on what they do best.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
In an article on your website entitled Managing During Crisis, Tips and Guidelines, you share with your readers the tips to demonstrate some of the basic EQ. What is a tip that you can share around EI and EQ that will help leaders grow their leadership style?
Warren, as you look at what's happened through the pandemic, obviously it has impacted everybody around the world. And I think that when it comes to leadership, the way that leaders are going to lead going forward will be significantly different than it was pre-pandemic. And I think that one of the key areas that is going to really determine the success that we have as a leader and within a leadership team is going to be the level of emotional intelligence that we have. So as I look, when I'm talking with entrepreneurs and leadership teams today, I'm really trying to communicate to them that as they look the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, emotional intelligence is something that's going to continue to be front and center as far as one area that we need to really be focused on. And I think part of that, when you think about what emotional intelligence is, it's really becoming aware of our emotions, understanding what those emotions mean, and as a leader, understanding how I go about projecting my emotions onto my team. And that's something that we really have to become aware of, because I really believe that management styles are going to go from one to a team, and it's going to become much more one-to-one. And so we're really going to be looking at ways to bring the human side back to leadership as we move forward. And the one tip that I would really encourage leaders to focus on is really to become empathetic. Learn how to have empathy and to be able to understand what that means by not only being an active listener, but also being able to really understand the emotions and where that person that you're speaking with, where they're coming from. And to be able to almost be able to put yourself into that position and see clearly, why they feel the way that they do, and then be able to have that dialogue. So I really think that from an emotional intelligence side, empathy, and obviously being able to be transparent, be authentic in our communications is going to be critically important as we go forward.
Yeah, so within the leaders teams that you've worked with, or maybe just for your observations, it doesn't have to be with somebody that you work with, but around the topic EI, because it's definitely, even though it's been around for several years, we get pushback in reference to it might be a soft skill. I don't see how it impacts my leadership style. So what are some of the challenges that you find with leadership teams, like really embracing being self-aware?
So I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush whenever I give this answer, but what's really been interesting when I'm talking with business owners today that are, that have been around for a while, that have had several years of experience, they oftentimes are very reluctant to really give much value to emotional intelligence. If I'm talking to a business leader that is in their 30s and even in their 40s oftentimes, they are much more open and recognize the importance to this. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that, as we look at the workforce today, first time in a long time where we've got 5 generations really coming together in the workforce. And the way that we go about communicating with a baby boomer versus the way we go about communicating with a millennial or a Gen Z is completely different. And so I think that, again, the emotional intelligence is something that is going to become front and center because the way that we communicate and the way that we lead based on our workforce is going to become considerably more challenging to be able to do. And we've got to be adaptable in each situation.
Yeah, I would agree in reference to the different generations.
Yes.
I think we know based on some research that millennials and Gen Z, they're looking to enter the workforce as a purpose-driven employee to have that purpose and deeper meaning. So I think they are open more to being more self-aware. But it's very important to be able to drive culture and being aware of the leader, how they're influencing the culture based on their leadership style.
Exactly. And I think a lot of our focus in our generation has been the main focus for business has been about the profitability. And I know for myself, I can remember over the last 20 years, a lot of time was just committed to the work that I was doing because of the dollars it was generating and because of profitability it was providing versus trying to find that balance between spending time with family and being able to, donate time and be a part of the community. And I think that's really where the younger generation that's coming into the workforce, there's more of a desire on their part to have more of that balance. And so as oftentimes, even though it can be somewhat of a challenge for us, we need to be open-minded to recognize the value that they're able to bring, because I think it will provide and produce a healthier person and ultimately will provide a better culture that will ultimately lead to great financial results for the company.
Sure. So in essence to that, around EI and being self-aware, how do you think COVID has affected employees' mental health, and what can employers do to prevent burnout?
When I look at studies, Warren, from 2019, there was approximately 10 to 11% of the people in the U.S. that were impacted by mental health challenges. When you look at that same study and look at the results from January of 2021, that number has grown from 11% to about 40%. So it shows that there's been a significant impact. Now, is all of that COVID related? Probably not, but because when you look back at 2020, we had COVID, we had political unrest, we had social unrest. So the entire year, there was a lot of stress that we were trying to deal with and process. And so I think that the result is still, when we look at our workforce today, we really have to be focused on, the fact that so many more people are really being affected by, depression, anxiety, especially. And so being able to, as an employer and as a business owner, I think we have to be aware of that, and we have to ultimately provide the environment where our employees feel safe talking about the challenges that they've had, and by trying to be able to destigmatize that negative connotation that comes with mental health. And we've got to be able to, again, free that up so that we can have dialogue within the workplace about mental health challenges. Secondly, I think employers really do need to focus on setting very, very clear boundaries between work time and giving that employee time away. I think as we look back at 2019 and prior to that, there was just a sense that we were always on 24/7, and I think that led to kind of led to the situation of the significant rise in mental health issues in this last year. So being able to provide some boundaries and give people time to really be with family or to spend time away and unplug, I think is going to be critically important. And then the last thing that I would mention on that topic is, as employers, we need to be taking a look at our benefit packages that we're providing to the employees and make sure that we're providing some resources in there and some benefits that will specifically address the mental health component, and really take a holistic look at our employees. So look at them from the physical health, mental, social, and then also financial wellness, because all of those areas are interconnected. So being able to provide resources and benefits that will help address those, I think is going to make for a healthier employee, which will be a more engaged employee, and will be a more productive employee in the long term.
Wow, that's a great perspective, Chuck, and certainly within that topic, that can be a whole podcast in itself. You might have to come back and just unpack that, because I think we are now open to more of people embracing mental health, just as if somebody had a physical ailment, which we won't get into the medical terms around mental health today, but in reference to that, being able to provide the right resources, though, for the employee to be the most effective employee as they can in their workplace.
Absolutely. And, as leaders, Warren, it's our job, I think, to not necessarily to try to treat the situation or to treat the employee. Our job is to really be able to help them navigate and guide them to the resources that they have available to get that help.
Yeah. So leadership is influence. And what is a top strategy that you share with your clients to help them increase their level of influence?
That is a great question, and I immediately think back to my days of sitting behind a desk. When I have people come into my office, if I'm sitting at my desk, I'm oftentimes trying to listen to what the person is saying, as well as watch my emails or watch my phone. So I think the one tip that I probably have tried to practice myself, and I've been able to try to communicate to my clients, is it comes back to that one-on-one conversations and really being able to show respect. So the one simple tip that I suggest to my clients is, when you have an employee that comes in with an issue, is really to get up from behind your desk and to find a place within your office, or if you don't have a place, just go for a walk and have that conversation with them. And really it demonstrates that you care about them as a person, but you also care about what they have to say, and so you want to be an active listener, and just really put yourself in a position where you can give your undivided attention to that need that the employee has. In my office, I've got a separate chair, a couple of chairs and a table. We'll go over and sit down at that location versus sitting behind my desk. And by doing that, it really, again, demonstrates to the employee that you want to hear what they have to say, and it generates trust and loyalty from the employees. So it really builds a cohesive, team and a cohesive relationship there with your employees.
Yeah, because you mentioned two important words, right? Trust. In reference to building trust, creating that environment to build trust, that you're using really your active listening skills, right? And I love that analogy and tip, because it seems so simple, like the act of actually moving away from your desk. There's not that barrier between you and the employee, and having that open conversation with them. And I love the idea of also maybe taking a walk. That might be appropriate depending on the work environment, so you can really listen and be in tuned to what that employee has to say.
I think that, a lot of times, regardless of whether we can help them or not, just the fact that they are being heard is something that does build that trust and build that connection with you as their leader. So I think that's really important that we do that.
So what I believe that success leaves clues, and one of those clues are the books that leaders read or authors that have influenced them. What are some authors that have influenced you in your business?
I think from a leadership perspective, I mean, I'm an avid reader of John Maxwell's books. I think he does a great job. I think that Stephen Covey, one of the main philosophies I use is always seek to understand and before being understood. There was a book that I read called Running with Your Head Down. The author was Frank Fiume, I believe is how you pronounce that. It was a phenomenal book that had a really impact on me and for my heart and my passion for building a company. So I think those are probably a few. Jim Collins is another one, but and what's really been really interesting, Warren, over the last couple of years, there's just been a lot of great books that have been written by people writing their first or second book and on leadership and on business, and I've become an avid reader of just trying to read a couple of books every few weeks. So I've got some books right now on remote work that Chris Dyer has just published, and I think it's a phenomenal book, and it really speaks to the future of work, which I'm excited about.
Well, interesting. Yeah, thanks for that list. There are some great authors that you've mentioned. Some of them I haven't heard, so I'll have to add them to the list in the process. So what does the future hold for you? Any special projects that you're working on?
So I think as I look to the future, that's one of the reasons that I started Whitewater Consulting was really to be able to just stay engaged with the small and mid-sized business community. I'm a huge believer that they are my heroes. I think they contribute so much to our society and to our country, and so I always want to remain engaged with them. The special project we've got right now is I am working with. I've spent most of this year so far writing, and so we have plans to release a book at the end of Q1 or beginning of Q2 of next year.
Oh, wow.
That will really focus in on leadership post-COVID and tying that in with some best practices, and then part of a career journey as well. So it's going to be a good compilation of a lot of experience that I've had over the 25 to 30 years, and being able to put that into the context of really targeting it toward entrepreneurs who want to start their business, and to those companies that have been in business for 3 to 5 years.
Wow, I look forward to reading that book. It sounds like a great one.
I will make sure I add you on the list to get a copy too.
Yeah, perfect. So if our listeners, which I know, want to be able to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to be able to do that?
There's a couple of different ways that they can connect with us. First is our website, which is whitewaterconsulting.net, and on there is an opportunity for them just to apply or fill out some information for a free 30-minute consultation. We would certainly welcome anyone that has questions that are HR related to feel free to connect with us that way. The other options, obviously, we're on all social media platforms, so LinkedIn to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are the 4 platforms that they can find us on. And then my personal email, if people want to reach out directly to me, is Chuck at whitewaterconsulting.net.
Okay, well, excellent, Chuck. I'll make sure those links are in the show notes, so it's easy for our listeners to be able to connect with you.
That would be great. I would greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Chuck. I appreciate your time to be on the show, to sharing your strategies, tips, and resources, to helping our listeners to be able to break through their obstacles, build resilience, and achieve success.
Thank you, Warren, for the opportunity. It's been great to be with you today.
Yeah, thank you. And this is your host, Warren Wandling, saying until next time, be resilient